This episode is sponsored by Informed Water Choices, providing utilities with research to make better water infrastructure decisions.
It's important for people managing water pipelines to understand these incentives because if they can adapt their water infrastructure to meet some of the requirements around energy infrastructure, there's billions and billions of dollars that could be reinvested in our water infrastructure to make it more secure, more resilient.
Hello and welcome to the Pumps and Systems podcast. I am your host, Tom Baer, a managing editor at Pumps and Systems magazine. Today we're speaking with Gregg Semler, CEO of InPipe Energy. He's going to be telling us about energy recovery systems for water utilities and in-conduit hydropower. So without any further ado, let's get into the episode. Welcome to the Pumps and Systems podcast. We really appreciate you being here. So how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, Tom. Good to see you.
So before we start in on our main topic, would you mind telling us a little about yourself? So tell us who you are, what you do, anything you would like our listeners and viewers to know.
So I'm Gregg Semler. I'm the CEO and founder of InPipe Energy, and I've been an entrepreneur most of my career. I've been building energy and water technology companies for the last 20 years. And I started InPipe Energy in 2016 because I saw a very large global opportunity to generate a new source of renewable energy from existing water infrastructure.
So today we're going to be talking about energy recovery systems for water utilities, specifically something called in-conduit hydropower. So let's start off with the absolute basics. What exactly is in-conduit hydropower for anyone out there who isn't familiar with it?
So hydropower is a well-known source of renewable energy. It generally comes from dams on rivers and streams. Conduit hydro is generating energy typically from pipelines or irrigation canals. And so it's more sort of smaller distributed source of energy.
You have spent time in both startup and public infrastructure environment. So what have you learned about the human side of trying to drive change in conservative systems?
It is interesting the difference between, public and private cultures. And, as an entrepreneur, it's all about time to market, speed, focus, doing things as quickly as you can. And for people in the public sectors, particularly the ones I know, which are water and energy, they are, for the most part, managing existing infrastructure. And the infrastructure is old and it's highly regulated. It's falling apart, both in energy and water. And so they're very cautious about how they make decisions and what they do because their focus is on safety and reliability and making sure that water is delivered very reliably or energy is delivered very reliably and safely and also at a low cost. So they're driven by that. The public sector is driven by the demand for reliability, whereas the private sector is driven by the demand for profitability. And so it just creates a different dynamic.
So obviously, high energy costs are a pretty major challenge for water utilities. So what can those water utilities do to transform their existing infrastructure into a cleaner, more reliable energy source?
Well, there in water infrastructure is very sort of standardized everywhere in the world. And it's about, pumping water or delivering water through gravity to a customer. And a customer could be a business, it could be a factory, it could be an agricultural facility, or it could be a human being like you and me. And and so there's not a lot of things that utilities can do because we need water when we need water. And as a result of that, That's their mission, is to ensure that when we turn on the tap, there's always water there. And so there's not a lot of things that they can do to reduce their energy intensity. However, there is a lot of wasted energy in that conveyance of water. And so water is flowing through pipelines, and that's basically the essence of hydroelectricity, is flowing water. And so when water's moving, that's energy. And so what I saw was like, why don't we harvest that? Why don't we capture that in pipelines to help reduce the cost of water? And so it is really about sort of understanding what's going on in that environment. And it turns out that what happens in the environment is that not only is water conveyed through pipes, pumps, but also valves. And it's these valves that are used to manage the flow and the pressure so that when you turn on the pipe, turn on the tap, it comes out at the right pressure. So I thought, like, what if we created a valve that instead of using friction to burn off that pressure, we used a microturbine, a turbine that can be used to generate electricity. And so then when the water is flowing through it, it produces electricity and also precisely can manage the flow and the pressure so that it's a win-win for everybody.
What do you think it would take for energy recovery in water systems to move away from sort of early adopter territory to a more like standard best practice?
I think the most important thing is to prove to these engineers that are operating water delivery systems that we are not going to negatively impact the delivery of water. So, as we've talked about, the delivery of water is the most important thing, and nothing comes close to it, period. So if you can show them that you can add value to what they're doing, which is really to reduce the costs of water, because they're also mandated to make sure that they're delivering the lowest cost water that they can, then you win. So it's really important to prove safety, reliability, and that you're not going to mess up their system, and something added in terms of value, which is reducing the costs. So, that's really the focus if you're innovating in this sector, is to be able to prove that you will not adversely impact their system and that you will reduce their costs or some other value to them. And so that's really the key to innovation in the space.
Water utilities are traditionally fairly risk averse. So, what are some of the concerns that they generally have, and how would you respond to those concerns?
So there's several concerns that they have. The first one is, are you going to blow up my pipe? Are you going to create a disruption to the delivery of water? Are you going to leach chemicals into the water? Are you going to change the temperature of the water? Are you going to create unpredictable pressure transients inside the pipeline? So those are the things that they're concerned about. Once they understand that, then it's, how do I maintain this system for the long haul? How long does it last? What does it take to maintain it? So, hydroelectricity and hydropower and all the components that go on with that is built to last for 50, 100 years. And most of the hydro assets in the United States have been in place for that long or longer. So those are the things that concern them, is, the delivery of the impact on the delivery of water, and how do I maintain it for the long haul?
Beyond carbon reductions, what are some of the main benefits that utilities can expect when they deploy energy recovery systems?
So what water utilities do is they deliver you water at a particular pressure. Otherwise, when you turn on the tap, it would be like a fire hydrant, and you wouldn't be able to take a shower in that. So what happens in pipelines is eventually they wear down from overpressurization, and they begin to get little holes in the pipes. And then when they get holes, water gets leaked out. And there's a significant amount of water loss in pipelines because of their age and because of this overpressurization. So with energy recovery, you can understand what is pressure building up in the pipeline, which means that more water is being lost. So you could reduce the amount of pressure, generate more electricity, and then reduce the amount of water loss. So water loss is a really important metric also to cities and people managing water because they pay for the water. Even though they sell it, they pay for it. So water loss is the major benefit that they can get besides energy generation, carbon emissions reduction, and sort of extending the life of their infrastructure.
Let's shift our focus now to places outside of the US. So, are you seeing any trends or opportunities internationally? And how do global markets compare when it comes to adopting energy recovery technologies?
We're seeing huge interest outside the United States, and it's really driven by rising energy costs. So while energy costs in the US are high and growing about 2 to 3 times the rate of inflation, outside the US, they're even more expensive. And so countries all over the world are looking for ways to find new energy assets, lower cost assets, and lower carbon assets. And so we're seeing that in terms of interest in what we're doing.
This episode is sponsored by Informed Water Choices, which provides industry information and research to help utilities make informed decisions about their water infrastructure. PVC water pipes are made from vinyl chloride, a toxic chemical associated with various health and environmental concerns. The Environmental Protection Agency is currently reviewing the environmental and health risks linked to vinyl chloride. To learn how your utility can reduce harm and protect your community, visit informedwaterchoices.com. Let's talk about policy. So, policy changes may very well impact infrastructure incentives, clean energy programs, things like that. So, how might these shifts affect utilities that are considering energy recovery? And what can they do to stay resilient in this uncertain policy environment?
So incentives are obviously what drive us in the United States of America and maybe all over the world. And so for the last 25 or 30 years, there's been a lot of incentives for energy generation from solar, from wind, from hydro, from coal, from natural gas. And that really drives investment in the infrastructure. And so, obviously the energy sector is a huge sector. It's important for people managing water pipelines to understand these incentives because if they can adapt their water infrastructure to meet some of the requirements around energy infrastructure, there's billions and billions of dollars that could be reinvested in our water infrastructure to make it more secure, more resilient. And so I try to encourage people looking at energy recovery to see the benefit that a lot of this can get paid for through money that's being allocated for energy. So while water, is really aging infrastructure and a critical resource, there's not that much money available for water infrastructure, but there is billions and billions and billions of dollars available for energy infrastructure. So if you're a water utility and you can find a way to become more energy efficient or to generate electricity, then Wall Street will beat a path to your door.
All right, so before we wrap things up, is there anything else you'd like to add or any final thoughts you'd like to leave our listeners and viewers with?
No, I really appreciate you taking the time. I think it's fascinating what's going on underneath our streets, and I think if people knew more about water infrastructure, then there would be more money for water infrastructure. So I would encourage your viewers to come on the show and talk about all the cool things that are happening with water infrastructure. There's a lot going on. There's a lot of interesting things. And one of my pet peeves is that people in water infrastructure don't like to talk about it. And I don't know what historically the reason for that is. Probably because it's kind of a political industry, and there's a lot of politics, there's a lot of regulatory issues, but it's also very cool. And the things that people do in the industry to deliver water to us each and every day is remarkable. And so I mean, I love being in the industry. The people are passionate, they care, they're driven, and it's just we just need them to talk more about it so that people can relate to it. And whenever I'm talking about it, people just get so excited. They just didn't realize how it works. And so I think it's important that people start to really understand water infrastructure, especially in these times of climate disruption, regulatory uncertainty, and Senate. There's just a lot going on. But, it sucks to be without energy, but it sucks even worse to be without water. So I think it's really important to highlight really the great stuff that's going on in cities throughout the United States and the world to deliver safe, clean drinking water to people. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Tom.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for taking the time and doing the important work that you do. It's very, very much appreciated.
Thank you.
Huge thanks to Informed Water Choices for sponsoring this episode. And of course, a big thank you to Gregg Semler for taking the time to share his expertise with us on energy recovery systems. If you're listening to the podcast and would like the chance to watch it, head over to our YouTube page to see the full video version. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you so much for listening or watching, and we will see you next time.